Hello and good evening. Welcome to Forum IAS. Today's session, we are going to discuss how to approach mains answer writing. This session is going to be conducted specially for the MGP program students, that is the Mains Guidance Program 2023 students. Now, let us understand the importance of good answer writing. Now, any sincere candidate who's appearing or preparing for civil services knows the importance of the second stage, that is the mains exam. Here, you're expected to attempt GS papers, essay paper, optional papers, and all of them require good answer writing skills. So you've got 4 papers of GS, each paper 250 marks, total of 1000 marks. Essay paper 250 marks. Optional papers paper 1 and paper 2 combined 500. This 1750 marks is solely determined by good answer writing skills. Now let us discuss what are we going to discuss in the today's session. So, the major aspects that we are going to discuss today are what is a good answer? Now, a good answer is not what we perceive to be a good answer or what the students understand. It is an answer which is suitably rewarded by the commission. Of course, we will discuss in detail what constitutes a good answer. The other aspect that we are going to discuss is the directives, the various directives which are given as part of the question statement. What do they imply and how to deal with them? The third aspect would be about how to write a good introduction to the answer. Moving forward, the next thing that we will discuss would be how to and what to write in the body content of the answer. The next would be, of course, a good conclusion and some extra suggestions. Now, let us move forward. Now, what constitutes a good answer? So, there are certain criteria which should be satisfied for any answer to become a good answer. I will list down the criteria and then we will discuss them one by one. The first and foremost important criteria is simplicity, to read. Whatever you have written should be simple to read and understand. The next part of the good answer is that every part should be addressed. Also, you should hit the question directly in the first statement. I will explain and elaborate on all these points. I'm just listing it down right now. The next is that, okay, so all these we have discussed. Now, next is that it should be having a good conclusion. The conclusion is very important because it sums up the answer, what the student has written. So these are few, but not all, on which these are the criteria on which we base the good answer. Moving forward, Okay, so let us discuss first that what do you understand by simplicity to read? Now, the person who's checking your copy, the person, the evaluator, should be able to read your answer and understand it too. Sometimes the student tends to write very complex arguments, complex ideas without proper explanation. So the idea here is that the person who's checking your copy should not strain his mind or eyes. By mind, I mean avoid writing complex arguments. By eyes, I mean that you have to make your answer a little bit presentable and organized. It should be having a proper structure to it. So, structure becomes important. Every part should be addressed. Now, you will come across many questions which have subparts or parts to it. So, any good answer should be aiming to answer each and every subpart of the question and not just one keyword which with you feel comfortable. Hit the question directly. Now, for this to understand, sometimes students, for example, let us take an example to understand it better. Maybe the question is contemporary issues of Indian agriculture. So maybe you have to discuss what are the contemporary issues of Indian agriculture. Some students who are new and fresh to the process of answer writing, they tend to start from the historical times. What were the problems faced in the colonial times in the Indian agriculture? Now, maybe few aspects can be mentioned, but a very detailed elaboration or explanation is not required in the introduction. So the introduction does not have to be starting from the historical aspect. It can directly start from highlighting the contemporary issues faced by the Indian agriculture. Also, when you're not hitting the question directly, you're giving an impression to the evaluator that you're beating around the bush, you do not know the answer to the question, or maybe you do not understand the question's demand. So let's not waste the time of the evaluator. Answer writing is a trust building exercise. It's a trust building exercise. And when you're building the trust with the evaluator, you have to respect his time, and for that, hit the question directly in your first statement itself. Conclusion, why it is important? Because sometimes students just write the introduction and the body content. That is the main part of the answer. But in a hurry, they totally miss the conclusion. Conclusion is important because it sums up what you have written. Also, it presents a holistic picture to the answer that you have written. So conclusion plays a very important role. Do not miss it. Now, this is all just talk. Let's understand with the help of toppers' copies. Because we need to understand how toppers write, and what I am saying is just what I believe or what toppers also imply through their answers. So, this is the copy of Divya Mishra. She secured rank 28. She secured a GS score of 455 marks, which is a very outstanding and good score. Now, let us understand through her copy. The question was, national infrastructure pipeline, while pushing infrastructure projects, will also make economic growth more inclusive, elaborate. I will also tell you how to identify what exactly is the keyword. So here, the keyword is the national infrastructure pipeline, and also the major important keyword is more inclusive, the economic growth more inclusive. So she started with NIP with 102 lakh crores was announced recently to bring about inclusive development in the country of GDP $3 trillion. This is the introduction, what she has written. She has addressed the inclusive growth component. You can see her answer is vertically segmented. This is another major dimension which constitutes a good answer, which is the vertical segmentation of the answer. I will elaborate on this more when we discuss how to approach or how to write the body content of the answer. So, the vertical segmentation, you can see that it is the introduction is clearly visible separately, the body content with different points, some flow chart, the diagram of various graphs or the data. Here you can see the various points and the conclusion. So this looks like a holistic answer. The student has addressed the demand of the question. Now let us move forward to another question written by the same person. Here the question is, discuss the security challenges associated with the Indian coastline, highlight India's preparedness in addressing the same. Please see how she has started. What is the introduction that she has given? India's 7,500-kilometer coastline provides her with huge blue economy resources while also exposing to maritime threats and vulnerabilities due to lack of adequate security infrastructure. Such a beautiful introduction. She has summarized both the opportunity or the advantage of having a coastline and the threats which are part of it. Then, because the question asks that discuss the security challenges, she has given the subheading as challenges, written all the points, also drawn a map of India. Now, many students, they tend to understand or they tend to get an impression that we need to draw perfect diagrams or perfect Indian maps or world maps. No, you do not have to. But yes, what is required is proper labeling. And at least the Indian map should look like an Indian map. So here you can see she has drawn an Indian map. She has, through the zigzag lines, shown the coastline. She has also shown the extent of territorial waters, 12 nautical miles. She has also shown the contiguous zone, 24 nautical miles. She has also mentioned EEZ, 200 nautical miles. So this is one of the diagrams. Earlier we saw she used a graph or different datas. The second page you can see, so properly underlined, given examples. Also, the second part of the question, which was highlight India's preparedness. So it's mentioned. Then again, conclusion. Now you see how toppers never miss out on conclusion. Now let us move forward. This is another copy of topper Aditya. He secured rank 92. His score was also around 440 plus. Now let us see what is the question that he has written. So the question is about parliamentary committees and how they play. The statement is that parliamentary committees play a key role in preserving the foundational pillars of representativeness, responsiveness, and accountability in a parliamentary democracy. In this slide, discuss the issue of marginalization of parliamentary committees in recent times, suggest reforms to strengthen them. Now, why I have read the entire question? Because when we read the entire question, we will understand how the student has addressed each and every dimension which is required. So, he started off with the parliamentary committees, where he has written, these are constituted by the presiding officer, role played by them. Now, please note, there were three keywords in the question: representativeness, responsiveness, accountability. Has he mentioned all of them? Has he written those points? Now, unless until you mention those keywords as part of your answer, you will not be able to do justice to the answer. I will also discuss this in detail in later on. that why those keywords or words from the question are necessary as part of your answers. Now moving forward, you can see, so the points have been written. Reforms, because the reforms was asked, suggest reforms. So the student has written the reforms. He has given the numbering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He has given the conclusion. Wholesome answer? Now let's move forward. So this is the copy of Anudeep Duri Shetty, rank 1, CSE 2017. Now, you can see the question was about how do pressure groups influence the policies of the government in the Indian context. Do they have a democratization effect, or are they mere promoters of narrow interests? Illustrate with suitable examples. You can see he has written about the pressure groups, started the introduction with pressure groups, drawn a diagram, just given citizen engagement, express accountability, upholds public interest, deepens democracy, features of pressure groups. Now, because the question is demanding, there are two subparts, democratization effect, or are they mere promoters of narrow interests? Both the dimensions are addressed in the answers. Narrow interests, and then the conclusion is written. Now, don't be afraid that why the answer is written into 2.5 pages. This copy belongs to an era where the questions were asked for of 12.5 marks, and usually more than 2 pages were given to answer them. But now, keeping in mind the current pattern, you will be getting 10 markers and 15 markers questions. Around 150 words have to be written for 10 markers, 250 words for 15 markers. 2 pages are given as space for 10 markers, and 3 pages space is given to you for 15 markers. Now let's move forward to understand this. But this would make sense later on when I discuss the usefulness of diagrams as part of your answers. So let's postpone this to a later part. Let's move forward. Now, what are the different types of questions asked in the GS mains paper? By this, I mean there are 3 types. The first type is the direct type. Why, what, how, also differentiate, distinguish, if you observe the question paper which came in 2021 mains, you would find in the GS1 paper, many questions were asked from this, differentiate and distinguish. So these are the direct types. The second type of question that you will get is opinion-based. So what are the opinion-based questions? How far do you agree? Do you agree? To what extent do you agree? Now, even though we have categorized them as opinion-based, you do not have to express your personal opinion, even if they ask, how far do you agree? Because it's not your personal opinion which is being asked. You have to give arguments based on certain reports of the government and other maybe UN documents, Niti Aayog documents, some committees. Now, the third type, which most of the students fear, is the statement and the directive. So a statement is given, and then the directive is given. By directive, I mean explain, elaborate, examine, comment, discuss, justify. All these are known as directive or question tail. We will discuss in detail about these directive. So, what are the different directives and the meaning of them? So, explain, very commonly asked. Elaborate, elucidate, you've got examine, most feared, critically analyze, sometimes examine is also asked, critically examine. The next is comment, discuss, illustrate with examples. So, these are the few directives. Now, I will discuss how you can address them. Now, explain means that, like now, right now, I'm explaining something, so you have to give a detailed account. You have to understand and give the meaning of the statement. Why I'm writing this down? So that you also write it down and do not get confused. Meaning of the statement. Elaborate is just detailed discussion, or in much more detail, you have to explain and elaborate. Elucidate is elaborate but with examples. Examine. See, examine is something which is stock taking. Sometimes it is asked, usually towards any scheme, any event which has happened already. So maybe you can get questions like, examine the successful implementation of PDS, or examine the successful implementation of National Food Security Act. So this you have to write with data and facts. Unless until you write data and facts, you will not be able to address the question properly. Now, coming to critically analyze. Students fear this most, but it is the most easiest way to address the answer. You just have to present both the sides, the pros and cons. Sorry, I'll just write it here. Okay. The pros and cons. Present both the sides of the issue and then take a balanced stand or a neutral stand. So by critical, it doesn't mean that you have to just criticize. By critical, it means that you will take a balanced viewpoint. You will address both the issues, both the sides of the coin, pros and cons, advantages and disadvantages, merits and demerits. That would make a wholesome answer. Comment. Now, comment is something which we ask for the opinion. Any issue is going on, you ask comment. Journalists ask ministers, comment on this issue. So, by comment, we mean the personal opinion or the viewpoint of the person from which the comment is asked. But in UPSC, the civil servants or the civil servants aspirants, they don't have to write their own personal opinion or viewpoint. Has to be written from the government's perspective. Any document which has government backing, Niti Aayog's document, maybe some committee. So those needs to be written from that point of view. Refrain from giving any personal opinion or viewpoint. Now, very common, discuss. Discuss means to present all viewpoints. It is a written debate. So you will discuss all the viewpoints pertaining to that issue. It is a written debate. Now, discuss words, yes, it means debate, but you will not exactly debate. You will write it in the form of an answer. So all the viewpoints you will discuss. Try to give examples, present an argument, but try to justify it also. By justification, I mean that you have to present some facts, figures, or some arguments so that the idea that you have presented looks justified. Very simple, illustrate with examples. You just have to explain, but with examples. Now coming to the point that students, they tend to develop an obsession with the directives. These all they do are different, but eventually you will realize that they do not differ very much from each other. So when you're writing an answer, maybe these keywords play a role up to a certain point of time and not beyond that. So do not develop an obsession with these directives. Do not hold yourself just because of these directives. Many students, they come in the mentorship and they ask that, how do I deal with the directives? They haven't written the answer because they were afraid of the directive. They did not know what to do with critically analyze or critically examine. So do not develop an obsession. Just try to explain the issue. Now, coming to the most important aspect, how to attempt a question. So, the first, I will again list down what all is required, how to attempt a question, and then we will discuss in detail. So, the first major is identify the keyword, if present. Second, identify the debate or the discourse or the critique of the issue. So, every question has some inherent debate or discourse associated with it. So, you need to identify that debate. The third is, now you have to divide the question into parts and subparts. So every question would be having some parts and subparts. So divide it, then you address those. Address those parts and subparts. The last and the most essential, give the conclusion. We will discuss this separately. So, identifying keyword. This becomes important. Let's do a mini exercise to understand this more. So, these are two of the questions which came in the CSE mains exam of 2021. This exercise we are doing to understand how to identify the keywords present in the question. Now, the first question is, how did land reforms in some parts of the country help to improve the socio-economic conditions of marginal and small farmers? Now, can you identify what are the keywords in the question? Land reforms. There are some minor words or terms which are also important. I will tell you why. Land reforms, the next major keyword is marginal and small farmers. Now, once you identify the keyword present in the question, can't you start your introduction with the same keyword? So, why don't you write an introduction explaining what is land reform? So, land reform are the efforts to reform ownership, operation, titling, sales of the land which is present in the country. So, this is the very common definition. Or you can also start your introduction with the data. Those students who are good with data and statistics, you can use those data, that how many marginal, what is the percentage of the marginal small farmers present in India. So that can also be one part of the introduction. Now, why did I underline this or highlighted this sum part? Also, socio-economic conditions. So you have to limit yourself to the socio-economic conditions. This sum, because if we have studied land reforms, we know that it wasn't a success in every part of the country. So, sum is mentioned because it wants to give an indication that how the answer should be written from the perspective of that how did land reforms help to improve, that is the positive aspect, and how maybe the lacunas or the unsuccessful implementation in certain areas has still not been able to help the farmers. So this is an indication. Next question is, a statement is given, though women in post-independent India have excelled in various fields, the social attitude towards women and feminist movement has been patriarchal. Apart from women education and women empowerment schemes, what interventions can help change this milieu? Now, please understand this starting from here to here. This is a statement given. The actual question starts from here, apart from. So, and this apart from is very important, because you will write in the answer that yes, women education, there has been many initiatives taken by the government post-independence, women education, women empowerment schemes. But the question demand is that apart from all these, what more can be done? What extra can be done? What are the extra interventions? Somehow it is indicating towards attitude and behavioral change, though it is not the question of GS4. So we will not write exactly attitude and behavioral change, but what can be written is that how different interventions can help change the attitude and behavior towards women. Now let's move forward. So I hope with this you understood that how to identify the keywords. Now, the second major part is identifying the debate or the parts and subparts of the question. So this is a question again asked in the CSE mains. The question says, to what extent, in your view, the parliament, so Another, first, the major keyword is the parliament, is able to ensure accountability of the executive in India. So, opinion based, right? But here you don't have to express your personal opinion. So, now to answer this, can't you see that there is a debate? Because it is asking to what extent, in your view, the parliament is able to ensure accountability of the executive in India. So, first, of course, you will mention the static portion. That is, the tools which are available to the parliament, to the Lok Sabha, to the Rajya Sabha, to ensure accountability of the executive. So that is the static portion. And then you will try to analyze, have those tools been utilized properly? What are those tools? Question hour, 0 hour, parliamentary committees, many things you can read and understand. But there's a debate that has the parliament been successfully implementing those tools to ensure the accountability, or has it failed to do so? So somehow there is a debate. And you have to address both these sides. That means that yes, Parliament has some tools available, and express with some examples that it has been able to ensure accountability. Also, somehow you have to express the other side, which is that it has failed to do so. So, passing of the farm bills through voice vote, passing of Aadhaar bill as money bill, all these issues which you have been reading and learning can be written as part of this answer. So you have to identify the debate. Now let's move forward. How to write the introduction to an answer. Now there are 3-4 tools that we have that we can use to write the introduction of an answer. The first and foremost is using some facts, data, some figures, the second way is through example. You can start with an example. The third way is contextual approach. I will explain this. So what do you mean by contextual approach? Any question, sometimes UPSC asks questions in the form of some context. So something has happened, maybe some amendment of any act, any scheme, those sort of things has happened, and they have tried to ask you. For example, the Environment Impact Assessment Amendment. So you can answer, you can start with the introduction that recently EIA was amended. That is one way. Another way to give an introduction is through definition or defining the keyword. The next approach could be articles of the Constitution, and maybe Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. Okay, so this is self-explanatory. If you are good with statistics, data, you can start with the facts or data. Example, through example, self-explanatory. I explained this. Definition of the keyword. Now, you need to understand that this is a very classical approach, very conventional classical approach, also a safe method. But yes, you do not have to know the exact definition. Sometimes students come to us, do I need to learn or remember the exact definition? The expectation is yes, that you have to. But if you do not able to remember in the exam, in the actual situation of writing the answer, do not fret about it. You can make a definition as per your understanding. So there's a definition of women empowerment, which we all know, and there's a definition given by UN. So if you know the definition of UN, women empowerment, you can write that, or maybe in the exam scenario, you can frame whatever you understand. So that is the most safest classical approach. Not sure what to and how to write an introduction, you can resort to this. Now, this, why I have given it as the first, because this is awarded. In the recent times, we have seen, okay. In the recent times, we have seen that toppers or students who are starting their answers with this kind of introduction, with some data, fact, they have been awarded nicely by the commission. So this becomes the most scoring. But yes, it is also difficult because as human beings, we cannot remember every type of data. The easiest way also could be starting with articles if it is a GS2 paper, and SDGs in GS2, GS1, GS3, anywhere you can use it. So this is the introduction of an answer. I discussed earlier that we will not beat around the bush, we will hit the question directly. And you have seen in the various toppers copies that they have addressed the question in the first statement in the introduction part itself. So you have to follow that. Body content of the answer. Now, this is the most important and the major part of the answer. So, as I said, that first you have to identify the parts and subparts. So, the first thing is identify the parts and subparts of the question. Address those parts. Unless until you address each and every part, you're not doing justice to the answer. I was talking about the vertical segmentation of the answer. I will discuss that now. I'm giving the heading as vertical segmentation. Some students, they tend to write answers like monolithic paragraphs. Too much continuity, monotonous, and monolithic paragraphs. It's not a very good presentation. Vertical segmentation means that you should arrange your answer, it should look segregated. So, here comes the introduction maybe. Then, any subheading which is given, you write the supporting ideas and arguments. Another subheading, again the ideas, example, supporting argument. Another page. Again, subheading, maybe some points, subheading, points, and conclusion. Now, this looks way much better than this. And that is known as vertical segmentation. Segment your answer. It should look properly arranged, structured, and a little bit segregated from each other. Difference should be there to understand from where the introduction has ended, the body content of the answer has started, where the conclusion is there. This would help you score optimum marks. And this writing style usually adhere to the students who have just started writing, so can be avoided. The next is, as far as possible, Give any counter narrative. If possible. Okay? Also, what can be done is using the terms and the words of the question in your answer. We had seen in one of the toppers copies. If you want, I can go back. Right? Using words of the question in the answer. Okay? So, use words from your question in your answers. Now, this also serves two purposes. One purpose, and the most important purpose, of course, is that when you use the words from the question, you tend to deviate less from the answer. So, what is the exact demand of the question? You will not deviate from it if you use those words from the question. And the second purpose is that you remind the examiner that you have not deviated. Also, he gets an impression that you have addressed each and every subpart of the question. So this is very important. This becomes optional. Again, this is very important to write the answer. This is to address each and every parts of the question properly and adequately, because unless until you do that, you will not get the optimum marks. Now let's move forward. Should I discuss the counter narrative? Yes, I should. So let's discuss the counter narrative. Okay, so what is the counter narrative? Now, any question is there which is asking about one aspect. Maybe through this example, actually, we will understand in the later part. There is one question I have planned for you guys, a mini exercise. But let's understand it here itself. So maybe the question is about one aspect, and you have written that aspect. If possible, you should try to present a counter narrative or a counter argument to it. So for example, let's discuss that example later on. Okay, let's discuss the conclusion of the answer. Very important again. Why? To sum up the answer, to give a holistic presentation. How you can conclude an answer? Now, there is something called as normative concept. Okay? What do you mean by normative concept? What should be done? What can be done? What is possible? Hinting towards the positive or suggestive ending to the answer. What can be done to solve the problem of poverty? Question is about education and health reforms. You are suggesting the reforms. What more can be done? So, positive, suggestive, what should be done, what can be done. Why it is necessary? Because it leaves a good impression with the examiner. He understands that the candidate is just not focused on the issues of the problem or the question, but he is also having a bent of mind towards solving those problems. So when we say that you do not have to start with the introduction with your opinion, yes, I agree, no, I do not agree, introduction should be objective. Conclusion could be a little subjective. By subjective, I mean You can present your personality. But yes, again, please be mindful of my words. I'm not asking you to present your personal viewpoint. Any committee recommendations, any economist recommendations, planners, you read newspapers regularly, we have many good articles coming. So try to pick up those core ideas and write as part of the answer. You cannot write what you think or what you feel is right. So now also students tend to write way forward. You should refrain from using this word way forward. It has become very monotonous, very repetitive, and it is not being awarded suitably by the commission. So try to avoid writing exactly the way forward. The content can be written. What you are giving as suggestions can be written, of course, but try to avoid this term. Maybe what you can do is suggestions. Okay? So this is what needs to be written in the conclusion of the answer. Now, I will discuss or I will give you some extra suggestions. So, the first suggestion is that do not give your opinion in the answers. Do not start your answers with yes, I agree, no, I do not agree, not to be done. Also, follow proper structure and organizing the paragraphs or the content that you're writing. So, properly organize your content. Do not write in monolithic paragraphs. No monolithic paragraphs. Also, diagrams can be drawn. Now, diagrams are not compulsory. Please mind my words. Diagrams are not compulsory. But yes, in the event where you want to give some extra information, where you're short of time, you can resort to the help or take the help of these diagrams. So, diagrams could be what? Maybe those sun, half moon, some issue is there, you're writing the various aspects to it, block diagrams. For example, thoughts, how they become character. So, you've got thoughts, speech, action, habit, character. So, this can be drawn. Also, what can be drawn is maybe when you're talking about the 6 principles of citizen charter. So, quality, choice, standards, value, accountability, transparency, citizen charter, 6 principles. So this can be drawn. Also, now let's see or let's go back to that topper's copy where she has drawn some diagrams. This is the one. So this copy or these diagrams are drawn by Aparajita. She secured rank 82 in 2018. I have taken these screenshots, the snapshots of her diagrams. So you can see how she has written public services, delivery, beneficiary, a sort of flow chart with various dimensions written, grievances, how to redress. Again, issues with loan waiver, all the aspects discussed. Participation, minimum governance, maximum governance, all the auditing, all these points, all these things written as part of the diagram. How is participation working? What are the various government agencies? So you can understand that how she has used the diagrams as part of her answer. Now, these diagrams, she herself confessed that because she was not able to complete the paper on time, that's why she had to resort to these diagrams so that she could save her time. So these diagrams, though they are not possible to be included in every question, but yes, wherever you feel that you're short of time, you have more to write, instead of writing them in paragraph or points, what you can do is resort to these techniques. Also, I would like to discuss one more point, because the students, they tend to ask us how many points should be written, how to write 10 points for an issue. You do not have to write all the 10 points. Even if you're reading about it, what you can do is called as inline enumeration. Inline enumeration. Now, what do I mean by this? For example, any issue, you have read 8 points of it. Now, write those 4 points, those most important 4 points, and then you can write other factors or other causes as A, this, comma, B, this, comma, C, this, comma, or and D. This is known as inline enumeration. You can write it as part of one paragraph. Okay? So this would help save your time. Also, it would not look like a list of things, 1, 2, 3, 4. When you're writing this, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4. Here you write other factors and causes, enumerate them, A, the point that you need to write, B, the point that you need to write, as part of one paragraph. So this would help save your time also. You will be able to express and tell the examiner that yes, apart from those 4 priority points, you also know the other 4 points of that same issue. Okay, another suggestion that I would like to give is of the approach of BAKE. This approach, any student can apply whenever he or she is finding difficulty to write an answer. So what does BAKE stand for? B stands for basic. Any keyword, term, you can define or explain. So, basic concept. A stands for articles. If you can include few articles of the Constitution as part of your answer. For example, there was a question on Finance Commission this year. Not exactly on Finance Commission, but a detailed question. So, what could have been a very good introduction? You start with Article 280. Article 280, it provides for a Finance Commission. So, You can start with that. So, articles can help you fill up your answers and also give you a good introduction. K stands for keywords. So keywords like nowadays very commonly known, shadow pandemic, infodemic. When there was culture of TikTok, so there was one word which was going on, democratization of social media. These are some of the keywords which you learn through the newspaper articles and the material that you're reading. You will come across these keywords, use them. When you use them, it gives an impression that you have understood the demand of the question and you have good content. E stands for enlightened views. What do I mean by that? You come across Amartya Sen's opinion on something, poverty. You come across Thomas Piketty's argument or viewpoint on inequality in India or in the world in general, or some views by Gandhiji. These all can be made part of your answers, and again, through these methods, you can score good. So BAKE is the approach. B stands for basics. A stands for articles. K stands for keywords. E stands for enlightened views. With process, with time, you will be able to develop content and knowledge required to write good answers. Now, let us do some mini exercise. Now, I'm presenting a question in front of you. Please read the question. It says, examine the role of gig economy, identifying the keyword, role of gig economy in the process of empowerment of women in India. So, for this, you have identified the keyword as gig economy, and the other keyword is empowerment of women in India. There's also an underlying debate, if you can identify. Has gig economy empowered women in India? Or there are some issues also related to it. Now, to understand this, I'm going to give you time to read this article. So take 5 minutes time to go through this article. I will also read for your understanding. But first, go through these articles, whatever the statements. For your comfort, I have highlighted few major points. So go through this article. Take 5 minutes. The article was published in the newspaper in the event of International Women's Day. The topic or the article's heading is Reaping the Potential of the Female Workforce. Fresh employment opportunities have opened up for women in the gig, platform, and care economy. Most of you must have read this article. It had come recently. So, when we are reading an article, what are the major areas that we need to focus on? Now, any article which comes in the newspaper, you will not get the entire answer in that particular article. Maybe you will get few good points and counter narrative and opposing argument. So, if I read with you, it says the large scale adoption of digital and smartphone technologies and the increased need for personal care for the sick, elderly, and children have opened up employment opportunities, especially for women. Why is that? The gig and platform economy offers flexibility and freelancing jobs. Now, did not we get the first point? It offers flexibility and freelancing jobs. To skip all this portion, what we need are concerted efforts and targeted strategies along with change in attitudes for women to take advantage of these new labor market opportunities. Access to higher education, skill training, and digital technology are the three great enablers in helping India reap the potential of its female labor force. Now, here they have given the data that what is the participation of women in workforce and how it has dropped. Here, they have tried to discuss the various challenges. Also, this article is about how care economy can be developed as a suitable opportunity or job opportunities for women. Now, the gig economy comprises platforms that offer innovative solutions in different sectors such as transport, retail, personal and home care. India has emerged as one of the largest countries for gig and platform work. So all this is talking about this. Then it talks about this smartphone gap, that how men have gaps, like men have smartphones and women does not have. All these suggestions. Now, how this article is relevant, as I said, that you will not get any complete answer for any question in one article. But yes, few points you will get, and over a course of time when you're reading many articles, you will understand both the sides of the coin or both the perspectives. Now, examine the role of gig economy in the process of empowerment of women in India. So, just like I discussed earlier, this is the major keyword in the process of empowerment of women in India. So, can't we give an introduction which is what is gig economy? What is gig economy? So, we do understand what is gig economy. It is a form of employment opportunity where based on short-term contractual employment with no social security based on the demand and supply in the job market. So all these words, though I have not given a very proper definition, but based on my understanding or your understanding, you can develop a definition which suits the demand of the question. Now, here you need to understand that examine word is also there. And has gig economy led to the process of empowerment? Yes. So you can present few supporting arguments that yes, it has led to the empowerment. How? The first point that we read, flexible hours, work from home, support income, extra income can be earned, right? Also, they can join or drop out as per their need, because women as caretakers and caregivers, they are not able to get permanent employment or in the formal sector. So gig economy is helping them get empowered, and these are the arguments. Now, there is a counter argument also. So, if you remember, I did talk about presenting an counter narrative or counter argument if possible in the question. So, the counter argument is, as it does not fall in the formal sector, no social security benefits, right? No pension, no NPS, other perks which are given to the formal organized sector employees. Also, flexible working hours could be turned into exploitative or exploitation. So maybe when a person is working in an organized sector, he or she has a fixed working hours. Through this gig economy, the working hours could be extended. So flexible can also lead to negative aspects, can harm the family relationships due to pressure. Also, they can be terminated. There is no assurance of employment. No assurance of employment of long term, because it is based on the demand and supply. So, though I have presented 4 points here and 4 points there also, but this, even though it is a significant part of your answer, the weightage should be less, because ultimately the question is asking about how the gig economy has empowered women. So the weightage to this portion should be less in your answer. Mostly it has to be discussed about the empowerment. And then you will write the conclusion, the way forward, suggestions, what can be done by government, by companies to help women be a part of this gig economy without it being exploitative. So, through this exercise, the main idea was that how we need to write an answer. Now, I will just summarize few things. Coming back to the good answer. So all these parts which I discussed, can you find all these things as part of the topper's answers? Yes, you can. You can also download these copies from the Forum IS website. We have uploaded all the toppers' copies. You can see them, how they write. Do they adhere to the same suggestions that I have asked or discussed today? So these are not anecdotal evidence. By anecdotal evidence, I mean it is not just based on one copy, not just based on this copy, or this answer, or this answer, but over a period of time and over a course of time, you will see that most of the toppers, they adhere to this formula to write a good answer. So, introduction is there, the keywords are addressed, proper vertical segmentation is there, each and every part of the answer of the question is addressed, the conclusion is there. Also, wherever possible, they have included diagrams. Here also, we have seen diagrams. Now, also we need to understand that these are not perfect answers. Perfection does not exist in this preparation. The toppers also have tried best to address the demand of the question. Here also, you can say that labeling is absent. It's not about perfection, but it's about doing the best you can in those 3 hours. So, what we can understand is that labeling can be done, but this is nicely written, nicely done. If you are good with facts, you can write them. Start with data, the introduction part that we discussed. Explained NIP with data. Here also. So this sort of introduction is awarded nicely by the commission. But yes, in the initial part, you can go with the definition. That was the most classical approach and easiest way. So all these copies, they tell us that there is a way to write a good answer. There are certain criteria which needs to be fulfilled. Proper introduction, presentation, vertical segmentation, identifying each parts and subparts of the question, addressing those parts, supplying a conclusion. Without conclusion, any answer is incomplete. So I hope now you have got a fair idea how and what to write. I also discussed how to identify those keywords of a question, identifying the debate or the discourse, how to approach the introduction, the body content. I explained through the question of gig economy how you can present the counter narrative. Inline enumeration. Here I had explained how you can write. I gave you the bake approach. If you're not sure of writing an answer, you do not have the proper content, you can go for the bake approach, write with basics, use articles, use some keywords particular to that issue, and if possible, give the enlightened views of economists, planners, Gandhiji. Diagrams, I explained how these diagrams, so citizen charter. Also, we saw the topper's copy, the copy of Aprajita, how she has used diagrams to save time. Also, I would like to say one thing. Answer writing is a process. It's not a one day's work. It's not that tomorrow you will wake up and you will write a perfect answer. It's an evolutionary process. It takes practice. So have that patience. Maybe the first answer you write, you would not get good marks. You would not be understanding what to write. But with practice, you will be able to improve on all these parameters. You can discuss your copies with mentors to gain different perspectives and understanding. Also, do not run after obsessively, after, I would say, writing too many answers. Do not fill the registers, 3,000 questions and all. That is not the purpose, and it would not really help you clear the exam. You have to understand that this exam consists of the 3 stages. So, you have to prepare accordingly. Yes, mains plays an important part, but do not just focus on writing answers and answers day after day, every day, thousands of answers. You have to work on the other aspects. Also, having a little bit of patience, working towards it would really help you understand and develop the art of answer writing. Okay? So I think it was a useful session for you, and you guys gained clarity. Thank you.